All right. Cycle 47, Civics 101, Fall 2020. Last session begins today, in which the interns will share with their colleagues presentations they have constructed based on material from the awesome magazine, Yes, issue 95, the Black Lives issue. The assignment was, each intern was to take one article from this issue and construct a presentation around it that explained to us what that article was about, what the issue was that the author was grappling with, or what the subject of the article was grappling with. Help us to explain that issue using some data porn, some graphics, some images, things pulled from the internet. In other words, to help us explain why this issue is grave and important, where it's going, which by implication would help us understand if the issue was not dealt with, what would be the consequences. So we're asked you to include that. We asked you to include some images generally to help us bring the issue to life, chance to exercise your creativity. But then the juxt of it was, the punchline was, okay, how would you solve this? Money being not an issue, how would you bring this to light, or to use your creativity to solve the issue at hand, and to put a few slides to that effect. Everyone will have 5 minutes. I'm going to be ruthless. I'm going to give you like a 1 minute warning. Please forgive me if I just have to, interrupt and just say, kind of got to move on. In other words, we have a full agenda and everybody has done some work. Let me just say this, first of all, Cycle 47. I've been doing this class now for IC Stars for 8 years. Many, many wonderful cycles, many wonderful interns, but you all have produced the best, and let me say that, the densest, most complete presentations from all your colleagues. And I know how hard you are working. I know how busy you all are, how slammed you all are. So that's a testament to you all's ability to juggle many balls. Many complicated balls up in the air, right? With what's going on in your lives and in the class and what is being demanded of you, which is awesome. So give yourselves many props for delivering under pressure. Okay, so with that, I'm going to switch over to our screen, our class page. So I'm going to share the screen, and here's how it's going to work. I've just loaded your presentations onto the presentations page of our class website, where they are parked for your pleasure and can be accessed at any time. I'm just going to go in order of the way that I've embedded them in the site. So I'm just going to call on you. You take the mic, so to speak. You shall see your presentation in the screen. And all you have to do is say next. And I am your faithful slide advancer. And remember, you're not reading text. Don't read text to us. Tell your story and let the images speak for themselves. And when you're ready, just say next. I'll advance the slide. Hopefully it will go smoothly. And so, Christelle, you are up number one. I know she's going, oh my God. Well, so a special applause, woo, to the first one, right? Who's going to break the ice. She doesn't look like she's too worried about it. All right. Let me see if we can bring it up. First, I got to share the screen.
Just a quick thing. There's something, Tom. It's Crystal. Just
I beg your pardon.
Yeah, no, it's just,
Christelle.
yeah.
I think that's the champagne or something.
Christelle, like the champagne. I know what you mean.
I beg your pardon. All right. Okay. So I think everyone can see the Prezi screen. Thumbs up if you can see it. Excellent. All right. We take you to the presentation. And here we go. Take it away.
All right, so welcome again to today's Civics. I will be presenting on mental health and zoning in on mental health in Black communities. Next.
Oh, that's interesting.
Are you zooming in?
Yeah,
Or?
there should be text, right?
Yeah, no. So it's just next. The right arrow click or just the little next on the screen itself. It'll take you to the right there.
Thank you.
So I'll start by defining what mental health is and how important it is to the community. Next. According to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. And the three core components of this definition are, as you can see, well-being, effective functioning of an individual, effective functioning of a community. Next. And mental health is very important in the sense that, as you can see from the three core values, these shape up a person overall. If your mental health is not the best, you're not going to be productive. You're not going to have fulfilling relationships. You're not going to be able to cope with adversity or anything that comes to you in your life. Mental health is very important because it is the first thing that you think of when you wake up, and it's the last thing that you think of when you go to bed. Mental health is you as a person, and then you have to really take care of your mind, take care of your body, take care of the people around you, and take care of the environment around you, so as to ensure maximum productivity and just maximum life. Next. And next again. So now I will be talking about the downsides of mental health, and if there even is really such thing as bad mental health. Next. I believe that, as you can see from the spectrum, I believe that there's no such thing as good or bad mental health, because that would mean that there's a standard unit of measurement for mental health itself. Mental health is more complicated than a binary system oscillating between resilience and illnesses. Mental health is mental health. There's a wide spectrum of feelings and experiences in this world. And while we're all in the same boat, we all have learned to cope in different ways. Mental health, my mental health is my responsibility. Your mental health is my responsibility. Everyone's mental health is everybody's responsibility, because if we function together as a community, we can be able to lift up each other as a community. Next. So the term mental illness refers collectively to all diagnosable mental disorders, health conditions characterized by alterations in thinking, mood, or behavior associated with distress or just impaired functioning. There are about 331 million people in the United States alone. And as you can see, 17.7 million are diagnosed with depression. And depression is just one part of mental illness. Next. Nearly 50% of people in the USA will experience mental health disorder at some point in their lives. And 50% of the 31 million people is about 175 million people who will experience mental health illness and disorder in their lives. And these are caused by biological, social, and psychological effects. And a June report by the CDC showed that from 1999 to 2016, suicide rates have steadily increased in nearly every state to create a national rise of 30%. And just in 2016 alone, about 45,000 Americans aged 10 or older died by suicide. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death, and it's just one of the 3 leading causes on the rise. That means that sooner or later, suicide might just be number 1. And many factors can contribute to depression. There's, like I mentioned before, biological, psychological, and environmental. And, there's also genetic factors. Women get more affected than men. And then, there's also a myth that children can't get depressed, which is, like I said, a myth, and people need to get over that too. Next. So getting into my main, next again, Tom, getting into my main topic, Black people, my Black community. We experience the world in a different way. Next. And Black Americans are 20% more likely to experience serious mental health problems than the general population. And I'm going to get into why in a bit. So next. I listed a number of reasons why Black people would experience depression or just mental disorder more than any other modern counterparts, and things like systemic barriers, stigma, trauma, poverty, police killings, racism, oppression, stereotyping, helplessness, pressure, gang violence, socioeconomic disparities. It's a lot that we have to go through as a community that normally other communities would not have to go through. It's a lot that our children are taught from a young age. It's a lot that our children can't do from a young age that, that contribute to the mental health issues that we later on experience as we grow older. In a June study published in Lancet, police killings of unarmed Black people harm the mental health of the victims' entire communities. So if one person is killed in my hood, I don't even have to know that person to be affected by their death. If one person is killed in the USA, I don't need to know that person in Africa to be affected, because it's my skin color. It's things that people like us go through all the time, and it affects us collectively. Next. And as I mentioned before, it's a lot of issues in the Black community that influence our mental health. Stigma and shame. We don't have community support. We don't talk about these things. We don't talk about the symptoms, and we're not really well versed. We're at 7 minutes. Okay, right. Next, I'll just rush through the solutions just real quick. Next again, Tom. So I got 3 A's for the solutions: acceptance, awareness, and advocates. I'll get into to those briefly. Next. Awareness is pretty much self-explanatory. We don't talk about it. There's no conversation around mental health in the Black community. There's a stigma on it, like I mentioned. Next. And pertaining to the whole stigma of it, advocates, I wanted to find an A word, so I had to just switch stigma around. And so advocates is pretty much stigma switched around. And we have to tell ourselves that it's okay to not be okay. We have to tell ourselves that we can come out and talk about these things. We have to address the issues in our community. Next. And acceptance is the last thing I have on it. Acceptance means that we are coming together as a community to accept each and every person in it, whether you're gay, whether you've been through trauma, whether you're poor, whether you're below the poverty line, whether you're uneducated, whatever situation you're at, we're supposed to, and we have to strive towards accepting each and every part of who we are as a community, accepting to the point where we'll be able to help ourselves and help each other, to be mindful, to be direct, to be soothing, to have a community care planning, to be nurturing, to have emotional awareness so that people won't be, so that young kids can have somewhere to have a voice. And next, twice, Tom. So yeah, no, that was my presentation on mental health in the Black community. You cannot have, I'll leave you with this quote from Joyce Meyer: you cannot have a positive life and a negative mind. It all starts with you, it all starts with me, it all starts with everybody. And we really have to, we just had tea with Mike yesterday. He went through mental health issues and he came out and spoke up about it to just random people. And I feel like the more we have a conversation, the more people will be aware and the better we can deal with this issue.
Awesome. Huge thumbs up. You're going to be a hard act to follow. In the cycle of liberation, we say liberation starts with yourself. You have to know yourself, accept yourself, and know where you are, in the context of society, history, and struggle. So this is actually a pretty great way to start our collective thinking now about liberation and fighting repression and fighting for justice. Pretty perfect, I'd say. Well done.
Tom, I don't know if this is allowed, but I was gonna ask, can I go next if it's cool?
Corey?
Yeah.
Well, let me see if that's
you. You are next.
You are next, but sure.
So.
Okay.
Quick question, Tom. Can I be the timer since you're manning the slides? Because that was 10 minutes and we don't have 3 hours.
I lost track.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah, you could be. That'd be great.
Okay. One thing for interns to remember: if you need to have have your slide presentation in your own view on your desktop, so that if you need to skip slides, you can tell Tom how far to advance if your time's going down. Okay, I'll give some time markers to let you know how much time's remaining, so that we can pace it out and everybody can get through. Okay.
So what's up, Cycle 47? I did What Defund the Police Can Do for Public Safety by Nicole Lewis. So before we even take a deep dive into it, in 2006, Sean Bell, a Black man, was shot 50 times the night before his wedding. In 2014, Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old boy, was just playing with a toy gun and died on the scene the moment the police got there. In 2020, for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, George Floyd was suffocated by a police officer while everyone just watched around. You can hit next. I'm going to take a little more deep dive into the issues at heart here. So in 2019 alone, over 1,000 civilians were killed by police. In 2019, the FBI has started a program to see where these situations were going on and stuff like that. With the data submitted, and only I want to say it was less than half of these police departments submitted those cases, and the cases that were submitted by the smallest of the small police departments that would put out this data. You can hit next. So a quote that I had put in, I don't know, we're not supposed to be reading, but this quote really stuck out to me. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about abolitionists is that they want to dismantle the police and leave nothing in its place. But in reality, abolition is about building resources and practices to address those harms. Abolition is a presence. Woods Urban. You can hit next. So these are more facts that I wanted to get with the issues. Cops are indicted in less than 1% of killings, but the indictment rate for citizens is 90%. And that's not even talking about murders, drug selling, just any other thing. This is just how this goes. And I've also seen a quote that was if there are 1,000 good cops on a force with 14 bad cops, you have 1,014 bad cops, because those good cops that don't report those bad cops are just as bad. So you can hit next. $1.8 billion is estimated the cost of the police misconduct to taxpayers. And that's not, I don't want to say that's not even just the serious stuff. This is the stuff when there's a wrong forced entry or just a cop hits another person. This is just a misconduct report. So this is definitely like where a lot of our tax money is going to. So you can next. Yeah, African American people are 3 times more likely to be killed by a police officer than white people. And in addition, 21% of that were Black. 21% of the victims that were Black were unarmed, while only 14% of those white victims were unarmed. You can hit next. So these are the steps and solutions that I thought to myself. The first 2 questions you should ask about when defunding the police and what can it do for you is ask yourself what your city's budget towards policing is. You want to see where that money is actually going towards and see what can be beneficial. And the second question you should ask yourself is like, ask yourself what ways our tax money can be in better use other than policing. And you can hit next. So these were my ideas on where we should go with the money. Better education. Obviously, the CPS system is not the best learning system in the world. There are so many flaws in it. There's a lot of programs that a lot of people didn't get to have growing up that I was blessed with. And it sort of hurts me a bit to like hear that a lot of people weren't blessed with these certain opportunities. Improved and affordable housing. Housing is very expensive. The tax rates in Illinois is very expensive. So I just felt like defunding that money can definitely go to building better housing and better, like, I just personally feel like there should be no homeless people in the world. It doesn't make sense for there to be homeless people in the world. What is that? I don't know what that is. Okay. And my last point, reform the police. This is my favorite one. I felt like we should be reforming the police in a manner of like, a lot of the situations that we get with these officers are like officers from the super far bumble areas of the suburbs of Illinois, and they do not interact with certain city people, especially people of color / Black people. So I just felt like reforming the police, giving them better psychiatric tests, better gun training, better weapon training, just a whole new reform of like, this is a new system that we should be going by. And I think with reforming the police, we can also reform the judicial system too. So that is my presentation.
Awesome. Well done, sir. Now I put into chat the link to our Jamboard. So I'm not going to do any small groups work on this session. However, I do encourage you to use the Jamboard to comment on your colleagues' presentations. I should have said that at the outset, but you can do it now and go back for Crystal's work. So as thoughts come to you, as you react to your colleagues' presentations, you don't have to sign your comments. You can if you want. But please do use the Jamboard for comments or images as you react to the presentations. And if the page fills up, just go to the next one. Okay, moving on. Adrian. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So hello, Cycle 47. It's me, Adrian Diaz. Next, please. So I also did the same topic as Corey just presented, what defund the police can do for public safety by Nicole Lewis. Thank you. So why defund the police? So I just kind of want to start out by talking about the imagery, and the reason it was selected was it's something that sort of affects me pretty deeply. So, you know, it stirs a lot of emotion and feeling and quite frankly, rage. And I think back to one of our early civics classes, you know, what creates an activist, and usually there's some sort of event or something that jolts you out of your current reality, your comfort zone. So with apologies to the cycle, if anything is particularly triggering or even offensive, I want to say that I'm offended as well. And that is actually potentially something that would call a lot of people to action, having this type of reality presented to them. Next, Tom. So when it comes to defunding the police, you know, it's not just a matter of police brutality. I think that was language that was heavily used, especially, you know, during the 90s, especially, it was a brutality. I'm going further and I'm saying that this is human life being lost. There's no other way to look at it. It's murder. So just in the last few years, you can see the number of people that are shot and killed by the police. At this point, I want to stress that this is literally gun related or, having ammunition used in a death. This does not include all sorts of other factors, such as, brute force or tasering or something that could happen as a result of, pepper spraying or anything like that. So this is strictly gun-related violence. So the real numbers are actually a little bit higher when it comes to people and death as a direct consequence of interactions with the police. Next, please. Additionally, it's not even just a matter of surviving an encounter with the police. Well, what happens as a consequence of that encounter if you happen to survive it? Obviously, jail time is something that you would have to deal with, and this is our society saying you don't belong in society anymore. You don't get to be amongst the citizens. You don't have your freedom. We have decided that you being locked away is the best solution. And in a lot of cases, it's not even to rehabilitate you. It's simply to lock you away for a certain amount of time. There's also fines, fees, court fees. Think of what it means to battle something, even if you're completely innocent, what the financial burden could end up being. If you're convicted, you have that label. Think of how people, friends, family might look at you differently. How about I want to start a job or I want to have a job once I get out? Extremely difficult to actually find employment. How society views you as a whole and can't be understated, the physical and mental strain. Next, please. So the police shootings and violence against the citizens of this country affect everyone. Definitely there's an issue specifically with the Black community in terms of being disproportionately affected. But if we think that this is an issue that only affects one segment of the population, I think we're missing the ball. Hispanic people, Latino people are affected as well. And a lot of white people are killed at the hands of police as well. So I just wanted to illustrate the fact that this isn't a single race issue. It's a human issue and something that affects every single person in this country. Next, please. So when it comes to the actual funds, I just put a couple of charts up explaining the actual budget behind and how much money specifically cities are spending. And it's in the billions of dollars for pretty much every single city. So just think about what that means, what that economic, powerhouse is, where that money is going, all of the pieces that sort of connect into that. This chart on the right also specifies how much per capita, basically, per each citizen is being spent to fight ourselves. That's what I really wanted to articulate. We are funding our own sort of violence. We are funding our own death at the hands of these people. Go ahead. Can you, so my first solution, yes, is data. So, and the reason for that is we need a clearer picture. So is basically to expand the scope of the Center for Policing and Equity. That's going to provide a lot more data. Next, please. The reason I selected the data as my first solution is for solution number 2. We need to admit that we have an issue. Without that admittance, we can never move forward. So there's a huge segment of the population that doesn't even think there's a problem. So if people can continue living their life thinking that there is no issue, that defunding the police isn't a solution, then we'll never be able to move forward, because we do need consensus as a nation in order to actually get this change. So we have to admit we have a problem, much like a person with substance abuse has to first admit that there is an issue in order for them to kind of be able to rise above that. Next, please. And as a final solution, I say, why stop at defunding the police? If the military is providing equipment and tactics for our police in order for them to effectively basically kill us, why are we funding the military? Why aren't we looking ahead? We are also the police of the entire globe, the United States is. So if we are acting as police, why are we allowing our military to act as these people who are basically killing other citizens as well? How about politicians? We pay for them. They always vote to increase their salary. Why can't we put a cap on how much they earn?
Okay.
These politicians are the people.
We got to call time on you. I think you hit it home, brother. defund the military, defund the politicians. I never heard that. So we're getting some creativity in here, which is awesome.
Great.
Defund the military. I honestly believe in connecting the dots. So I think astute analysis there between local issues and federal issues. So that's something that you all can meditate on for other parts of our work and your thinking. That a local city can do a lot to reform, but we're all living obviously under a federal government. So if we're at war, if we have bad drug laws, other things going at the federal level, we will be constrained here at the local level. So that's an excellent point. Okay. All righty. Okay, let's get to the next presentation. Yeah, gotta get back to our, here we go. Nicoletta. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay. All right, thank you. So the article I chose was Microinterventions for Maximum Effect by Sarah Lazarevic. Next. So the issue she addressed features the concept of a microaggression. So she defined it in her article, but I'm also going to include some of the definitions included in the sources she referenced. Aggressions are often subtle or unintentional actions or statements that demonstrate some type of prejudice or bias towards a marginalized group. But they're not always, they can be intentional, they're not always unintentional, and the real measure of them is in the size of the impact, hence the name microaggression. They're often occasions that happen brief and commonplace in people's lives on a regular basis, sometimes on a day-to-day basis. And they can be any of like the verbal statements you see listed here as examples, or sometimes actions like someone clutching their purse when they see a type of person they approach on the street. There are often these small actions that people act out on others every day. And in the grand scale of things, when you add them up in someone's experience and in a marginalized group's life, these are also systemic problems that need to be addressed. Next. So the first person who proposed this idea of microaggressions was a psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Chester Pierce. And he was a very accomplished man in his life. He did a lot of things, but he often experienced a lot of slights as a Black man. And he gave that experience a name. And the concept of microaggressions did not get really thoroughly researched until decades later after he proposed this idea by a psychologist by the name of Dr. Daryl Wing Sue. And he expanded on this idea. He talked about different kinds of microaggressions in his research and offered a strategy to address microaggressions that he referred to as microinterventions. Next. One of the issues with microaggressions is that it's difficult to identify and quantify in data, but you can measure the effects that things like this have on people. Because it is a form of discrimination. So the American Psychological Association does reports every year for the past decade or so called Stress in America reports. And they do surveys serving various portions of the American population. They measure different kinds of stress and how people rate them. So this data here represents the percentage of adults who identify discrimination as a source of stress in their life over the past 6 years. As you can see, it's on the rise with a distinct rise, especially in 2020 for some obvious reasons. Next. Another area that people often experience microaggressions is in the workplace, and a nonprofit organization called Lean In has been doing reports on different issues in the workplace through surveys since 2015. The data here references a specific metric they actually measured out in a certain way of microaggressions that, in this case, women experience. These questions here covered basically whether or not people felt like they had their competence questioned, whether they felt like they were being overlooked or disrespected or regarded in a non-professional way in the workplace. And the trends here are typically with men as the control group, women consistently had more issues with microaggressions in the workplace. What I liked about the 2019 data was that it also kind of reflected other aspects, women who represented different sexual orientations or women with disabilities. And you can see a pattern here that people that fall into multiple marginalized groups often experience several, have a harder time with microaggressions in the workplace. Also, Black women were seen as having a harder time with microaggressions in the workplace compared to some of their other fellow women of color. Next. So coming back to the concept of micro interventions that Lazarovic pointed out, as well as Dr. Wang Su, he summarizes this into 4 steps. And the whole point of addressing microaggressions is basically to have a conversation. And the progression of this conversation is summarized in 4 steps: identify, disarm, educate, and support. Next. So with identifying and disarming, we're talking about just calling out the issue, and then also in turn, taking the intent to harm or offend out of it, so that way a conversation can proceed and have a constructive discussion. My favorite approach for this is to simply ask the person, can you please elaborate on what you said? That is, in a way, it does twofold. It allows the person to identify it and disarm it in their own way, because people tend to have a hard time or get more defensive when someone else calls it out versus when they have to address that action on their own. Next. Finally, educate and support. We need to learn how to empathize with people. So educating others about when they offend, and also in turn being proactive and being more aware of and respecting other people's experiences, so we avoid issues with microaggressions. Also gathering support and making support groups and a network where people share experiences. So not only you can make people feel like their issue is valid, but also address that issue and on a more macro level or a group level, and hopefully eradicate that issue altogether. In general.
Sorry, yeah. That's time. That's
okay.
Yes. Let me give a little guidance. So this is what I do. And I know some people can see the chat. So at halfway, I'm giving you a warning. Usually I'm giving a 1-minute warning. When you see 1 minute, you may need to advance the solutions. So what people will need to do is start learning how to paraphrase and make a 3-point summary if you're not going to hit all your slides. The extended time that I'm giving is 6 minutes. Like if you don't hit the 5-minute mark, then I'm maybe giving a 1-minute wrap up, because I've done the math about where we'll finish, but I can't go beyond that. We won't finish everybody.
I appreciate that. Yeah, these are meaty and great, and I wish we had more time together, but we just don't. And I need time also at the end to do some wrap up. So we got to be a little brutal, crew. Okay, moving on. Tony.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Cycle 47. My name is Tony Metters, and this is the Trust, revolutionizing the checkup. In this dire time, we are seeing a greater number of minorities going out without necessary care and medical attention, and many have barriers to care more than financial woes. This is based on the article by Tamara E. Holmes, where the issue involving the Black community is that a Pew Trust survey found that only 35% of Black Americans have a great deal of confidence in medical scientists to act in the public's best interest, compared to 43% of white Americans. Next slide. Addressing what is actually at the heart of what Black people go through in order to prevent them from actually wanting to take care into their own hands and maintain their own good health is cost. the obvious reasons of being it costs is too high for many of African Americans at their stage to actually approach healthcare, even with the Obamacare expansion. Education, meaning the lack of resources to find out what exactly could be at the issue of their growing pain and woes and health issues. But more importantly, the social relation, the idea that they are not actually able to be part of the medical understanding of their own care because they are not allowed to actually be in the realm of being a doctor or having doctors of their own race analyze their condition as Black people would know what Black people would be going through, basically. Next. The bias, stereotyping, prejudice, and clinical uncertainty a part of healthcare providers may contribute to racial and ethnic disparities in healthcare, and that a small number of studies suggest that racial and ethnic minority patients are more likely than white patients to refuse treatment. That is based on a study made by the Committee of Understanding and Eliminating Racial and Ethnic Disparities in Healthcare. It's a broad study that basically says that due to the fact that the Black experience is a lot more strained in getting what they need, and there is always different elements attacking the Black communities, they are less likely to trust the actual scientists on what exactly is their care, and they do not necessarily want to approach people about their own care for other reasons, such as guilt about having not enough money, being a little bit more shy about being seen as weak. There are other issues that predate the ability for African Americans, men or women, to seek care that they need. Next. And this is the Training Finder real-time affiliate integrated network site, which actually gives details of what public health workers, whether they be nurses or even nurse practitioners, are actually in your area given by state. And according to this composition, they were predominantly white, 88%, followed by Black or African American, maybe about 7%, Asian at 2%, multiracial at 2%, American Indian at 0.6%, and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander at 0.4%, I'm sorry. White learners constituted as the majority of 49 states and the District of Columbia, with Hawaii being the big exception. And then oral health, also for dentists, remains a very large issue, but only 3% of those dentists are Black. All right, and next slide. So my concern was that we need to get a routine checkup more importantly, because that's the way we start our health, and also the way we actually be able to have the identified information to give ourselves the tools to actually create a health plan or prepare for our own health in the future, so that way we're not in the dark about anything that we may need, and we can actually increase the chances of us living longer. But how do we get one in this environment in the first place if the majority of minorities can't even see the doctor without fear of being discriminated against in the actual doctor's office, or that fear? So I actually developed a system called the Trust, where we actually take healthcare into our own hands. We build a network of existing and new community clinics in the area that give necessary care and services to minority communities in any state or city that actually we would reach out to. The fundraising group that we add to this will help give those clinics growth and actually give them the ability to actually stage different amounts of care based on the amount of funding given to them by those charities, so that way they can actually give those actual defined checkups or the next level of care free of charge to anyone that enters the clinic. And we can actually help give more people more access to care without having to worry about paying up front. And the third thing is most important. We actually develop a web-based portal to allow clinics a fast, efficient way to operate the routine checkup, the routine needs of examining a patient or giving them preventive or first-level treatment at the start, and then build on those services as more money comes in and more access to care takes over. And then my actual goal over the long term would be to literally replace the entire healthcare system by making it so that way, instead of you paying into a healthcare provider, since they got rid of the mandate in Obamacare, people would be able to change who they pay from the insurance companies to their own donated system, so that way we are actually taking care of each other finally and creating our own healthcare system in reverse. So that's how I believe the Trust will help each other. The last page is just a picture. So there you go. We can take better care of each other. Welcome to the Trust.
That's what I'm talking about. Thinking big. That's what I'm talking about. Great.
Nice one, Tony.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, money is no object. You know, as I say, We've been fighting wars consistently since 1898. If America wanted to have a series of community health centers, it's not a matter of money, folks. It's a matter of something else. All right, that was really creative. Onward to Anthony.
All right, so welcome to Civics 101 with Anthony Lynch and Cycle 47. Next. So I chose to do my presentation on Truth and Redistribution by Derek Hamilton and Naomi Zadi. Next. So let's get into the guts of the problem that was addressed in this article. So over the last few years, and especially 2020, we've seen the rise in protests going on. And the reason behind these protests has to deal with the racial violence going on that Black people has to face. And it basically talks about the only reason that things can happen to like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd is because it's backed kind of like by the policies of our country. And that the economic and the violence goes hand in hand. And that really started with in 1619 in Jamestown when the first slaves were taken off the boats and sold. That the problems that we deal with in America as African Americans has to deal with us being devalued as humans. So being looked at as less than humans for economic gain. Next. So, and being devalued with little political or economic backing, we're just vulnerable to a lot of things, and here in America, and that leads us to being vulnerable when it comes to this pandemic because we have a lack of resources and representation. Next. So now we go into the wealth gap that affects us as a people. So you see here, white families usually have about 139K yearly earnings, and you see Latinos and Black people have about 17 and 16K. So we're really at the bottom here. Next. And this next graph basically just shows that in greater detail. So you see white families started out with like 98,000, Black families started out with 12,000, and white families grew to like about 144,000, and Black people actually went back $1,000. So our situation economically isn't getting better, it's actually getting worse. Next. So I want to start with some of their solutions that I found in the article. So some of their solutions were basically reparations to kind of break up and free up some of that money that's kind of like held in the hands of white Americans. Is just to kind of like reparations to kind of redistribute funds so that we can be on a even playing field so that we can participate politically and economically. Another one of their solutions is baby bonds. So every American that's born can be given a trust fund of about 20,000 just to start off start them off economics. And then another one was a tax cut. So basically tax the wealthy to kind of free up some of their money again and to put it back into the economy. My solution is basically to not really worry about none of that, to be self-sufficient and to unite, together and pool our resources together and to figure out problems to our own solutions. And some of that, and after that, we basically can vote. I believe that if we put money behind who we want as a candidate, that we can get somebody who cares about us in the office. So being politically and socially active. Next. And my last solution would be just basically education. If you don't know where you've been as a people, then you don't know where you're headed. So not only getting educated formally by going to college, but actually learning your history as a people so that you can understand where we're at in these times, and we can move for more successful. Next, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah, we're a big believer in context and history at the Civic Lab. As you say, if you don't know where we are, you don't know where you're going. Or put it another way, you have to know the past in order to change the future. You have to know the past and the present in order to change the future. Sharonda.
Hello, good afternoon. This isn't the beginning slide. I have the same presentation as Anthony. That's great. Can you guys
hold
hear me?
on.
I was having a little connection issues.
There we go.
Am I fine on? Y'all can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, the article is Truth and Redistribution, but my article is Truth and Redemption. I'm doing Truth and Redemption. It is the same article as Anthony. You can go to the next slide. Truth and Redistribution by Derek Hamilton and Naomi Zweedy. I chose this. Oh, can you go back, please? I chose this article because I was very much so attracted to the picture. She represents the character where females were coming into their own and providing a way and helping America get to where we needed to be at that time. So this is a new version of that picture showing that the African American woman is helping to get where we need to be as a society. Next. Anthony, from his, you can know that the Truth and Redistribution is all about closing the economic gap between Blacks and whites. This picture represents the stability that is afforded when you have money and power. And I'm looking at the family on the bridge who are on it's not even a steady bridge. And that represents the things that were allowed to us or given to us as a race to try to cross that bridge, to try to get to the stability. So now we need to figure out how to close the racial gap. How do we build Black power, and how do we end plutocracy? That's the basis of the article. Next. It is very imperative that we address the situation and we close the gap, because as you can see, the median Black household wealth is on a path to hit zero by 2053, and we will zero. Everybody know what zero is. Zero equates to nothing. We won't have any equity value in society, and that's imperative. Next. Also, right now, if you look, you can see the data reflects the median wealth in today's family, where Blacks and Latinos are very underneath the white families' median family income. It's an unfair advantage. Next. This slide shows the home ownership between race. You can see that the white high school grad has a 60% home ownership, which is greater than any other race home ownership. Home ownership equates to equity as well. Home ownership instills a sense of stability. You've provided for yourself, you provided for your family. Now you can go on to achieve other things. Home ownership is very powerful in terms of just establishing a sense of self in society. Next. Those are things that those are challenges that we face because of the economic gap, and these are some of the solutions. Baby bonds, Anthony spoke on those. I believe those are great ways to start. That is a seed to plant for our future. We as African Americans have contributed great we've contributed greatly to the building of America without being compensated. So this is a form of reparation, and it's planting seeds. So this is a start, and I can agree with baby bonds as one of the solutions. Next. Also education. Me and Anthony agree on that. He said you have to know where you came from in order to know where you go. But I feel like you can't just give the babies the money and don't teach them how to effectively use the money. So that is an education, how to use this wealth, how to mentally, physically be as a person, you know, to just be able to. So a lot of things need to be taught in order to instill those values that money, because I guess they say the greed of money is the root of all evil, but money gives you options. And if you are educated and have those options, you know what to do with the money and you are able to grow, is one of the solutions, education. And the next slide, my last solution is the politics. We as a community have to stand for our rights. We have to enforce our beliefs. We have to get our politicians that are elected to contribute, to do the things that they say they do, to recognize the issue, and we have to stand on them. We have to definitely make them accountable in order to get where we want to get as a nation, as a people, because I do believe from the beginning we have been stripped of our history, of our culture, and reparations is definitely a way to help restore that so we can get the balance needed to be on the even playing field in America. And that's
Awesome.
my presentation. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
start to see some themes here. I hope you guys are using the Zoom boards to put in comments and observations, especially if you're seeing some themes, some commonalities, not just across what the articles, what the authors have looked, but what you guys have taken from the articles. I'm starting to see some connections here. So I'd appreciate it if someone would jump in the Jamboard and add some thoughts to that as you're seeing connections between these presentations, even the ones that are completely different from each other. Okay, let's go to Nolan.